The United States has 400 land-based nuclear missiles, Iran just received 500, and Washington found out after they were already in the ground. On a date that defense analysts will study for decades, North Korea completed the largest covert weapons transfer in modern history. 500 Hwasong-18 ICBMs, Pyongyang's most advanced solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missiles, moved from North Korean storage facilities into hardened underground bunkers scattered across Iranian territory. The transfer was not intercepted, it was not disrupted, it was not even detected until it was over. The most expensive, most sophisticated intelligence apparatus ever assembled by any nation in human history watched it happen and called it too late. 500 missiles, each one road mobile, each one capable of reaching Tel Aviv, every American base in the Middle East, and select targets inside the continental United States. Each one fueled, ready, and sitting beneath Iranian soil right now. This channel runs on no corporate funding, no government backing, and no advertising pressure telling us what to leave out. If this kind of analysis matters to you, the kind that goes where mainstream outlets won't, consider supporting this work directly. The link is in the description. It keeps this channel independent, it keeps this reporting uncensored. Western intelligence did not miss this transfer because of incompetence. It missed it because the operation was built, from its first day, around every documented gap in Western surveillance architecture. The route ran overland, through Central Asian corridors, through territory where American collection assets operate under political restrictions that prevent full-spectrum coverage. No maritime choke points, no monitored airspace. The precise seam between what American satellites are capable of tracking and what American foreign policy permits them to track. The shipments were broken into 23 separate phases across 16 months. Each individual delivery was sized below the threshold that triggers automatic escalation review. Each one, examined in isolation, looked like routine military logistics, component transfers, maintenance equipment, standard bilateral movement between two nations that have cooperated on weapons development for over a decade. Reviewed individually, every delivery looked manageable. Reviewed together, after the operation was already complete, they added up to the single largest non-American ICBM force on the planet. And while the transfers were moving, North Korean and Iranian technical teams maintained full routine activity at every known facility. The sites Western satellites had been watching for years looked exactly as they always had, because those sites were not where the transfer was happening. The real movement was occurring 340 kilometers from the nearest monitored location, inside a logistics corridor that had never been flagged as a primary collection priority. By the time intelligence analysts assembled the full picture, there was no picture left to act on. The missiles were already dispersed, already in position, already pointed outward. To understand why this transfer rewrites the strategic map of the entire Middle East, you need to understand what the Hwasong-18 actually is, and what makes it categorically different from every missile Iran has ever previously held. Every long-range Iranian ballistic missile before this one used liquid fuel. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Liquid fuel missiles require hours of preparation before launch. During that fueling window, they generate a specific combination of thermal signatures, chemical emissions, and ground crew activity that satellite systems are calibrated to detect. That detection window, sometimes as long as 4 to 6 hours, was the foundation on which American and Israeli preemptive strike doctrine was built. Find the fueling, strike before ignition, strike. The doctrine worked because the window existed. The Hwasong-18 closes that window entirely. It uses a 3-stage solid fuel propulsion system. The propellant is already loaded inside the missile body at the factory. It does not need ground fueling. A launcher receives an order, erects the missile, and fires within minutes. The thermal signature appears seconds before ignition. No preemptive strike architecture currently deployed by any Western power can respond on that timeline. That alone would be enough to rewrite the deterrence picture. But the Hwasong-18 does not stop there. Range: over 15,000 kilometers in confirmed test configuration. From any point inside Iranian territory, it reaches Tel Aviv, Riyadh, every American forward base in the region, every NATO capital in Europe, and portions of the American eastern seaboard. Guidance: inertial navigation with stellar position updates. It navigates by stars. There is no GPS dependency. No vulnerability to the American GPS jamming operations that have been running continuously across the Middle East for years. The same jamming that has meaningfully degraded conventional Iranian missile accuracy. That jamming has zero effect on this weapon. You cannot jam a star, terminal phase. The Hwasong-18 carries a maneuvering re-entry vehicle. In its final descent, the warhead executes lateral evasive maneuvers at hypersonic velocity. The THAAD system, America's highest-tier regional missile defense, was engineered to intercept ballistic re-entry vehicles on predictable descent trajectories. Against a warhead maneuvering at hypersonic speed, its intercept probability drops to a range that no Pentagon briefer will state publicly. Israel's Arrow 3 system faces the identical problem. Both systems were designed for a threat profile that this missile does not follow. Now hold all of that in your mind and multiply it by 500. If you are not subscribed to this channel yet, do it now. Hit the bell. The situation developing around this transfer is moving fast, and the next update will not wait. Within hours of confirmation, the National Security Council convened an emergency session. What came out of that session was not a plan. It was a documented accounting of why every available option leads somewhere no administration is prepared to go. Strike the missiles. They are road mobile. They are dispersed across Iranian territory in configurations specifically designed to prevent concentrated targeting. A strike campaign capable of meaningfully degrading 500 mobile launchers is not a precision operation. It is a full-scale war against a country that can close the Strait of Hormuz, activate Hezbollah and Houthi networks simultaneously, and strike every American regional base with the conventional missile arsenal it held before this transfer even began. A Hormuz closure hits the global economy in the trillions within the first 90 days. American casualty exposure from simultaneous base strikes runs into the thousands. That is the cost of option 1. Before Iran fires a single Hwasong-18, covert sabotage, targeted disruption of technical personnel, cyber intrusion into launch command systems, physical degradation of launcher components, all of it operates on a timeline measured in years. The deterrence problem created by 500 already dispersed, already fueled ICBMs exists this morning. Covert action, even executed flawlessly, does not solve a today problem on a today timeline. And Iran has now had 16 months to harden the operational security around these systems against exactly this kind of interference. Sabotage does not move fast enough to matter. Sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Iran did not spend 16 months and an estimated $9 billion building this transfer operation to hand the missiles back in exchange for sanctions relief. The entire strategic logic of acquiring 500 ICBMs was to construct a deterrence wall so costly to breach that military pressure becomes permanently unacceptable. Asking Iran to dismantle that wall through diplomatic negotiation is not a strategy. It is a request with no realistic answer on the other end of it. Accelerated missile defense. The United States does not currently have enough THAAD interceptors deployed globally to engage a meaningful fraction of a coordinated 500 missile launch. Building that capacity takes years and costs tens of billions. And even a theoretically complete intercept architecture runs into a structural cost problem that cannot be engineered away. Each THAAD interceptor costs approximately $10 million. Each Hwasong-18 costs a fraction of that at North Korean production rates. Iran can sustain exchange after exchange. The American interceptor stockpile cannot. Washington is not paralyzed because it lacks competence. It is paralyzed because the strategic situation it now occupies has no option that does not cost more than the problem it is trying to solve. For Israel, this is not a crisis. It is a structural break. Israel has operated for its entire modern existence as the only nuclear-capable power in its immediate region. That status is not simply a military advantage, it is the architectural foundation on which the entire Israeli deterrence posture was constructed. The implicit guarantee that underwrote Israeli national security for 75 years was this: no regional adversary and no coalition of regional adversaries would ever hold the capacity to threaten Israeli existence without facing a response they could not absorb. That guarantee assumed a qualitative gap that no regional opponent could close. 500 Hwasong-18s close it. Israel's Arrow 3 batteries are now on continuous engagement-ready status. THAAD systems provided under American security arrangements have been repositioned to cover northern and eastern approach corridors. Underground command facilities operate on full wartime staffing. The submarine fleet, Israel's guaranteed second strike capability, has dispersed to patrol positions across the Mediterranean and Red Sea. These are not the actions of a state that has found an answer. These are the actions of a state buying time while it tries to find one. The Samson option, Israel's long-held doctrine that an existential threat to national survival would be met with nuclear retaliation regardless of cost, now confronts a question it was never architecturally designed to answer. What is the deterrence value of nuclear retaliation against an adversary that may hold nuclear retaliation capability in return? Mutually assured destruction does not deter a party that has already concluded the cost of confrontation is acceptable. Israel is running that calculation in real time, with no historical precedent to draw from. Pull back further, and the picture gets larger. Russia is watching with undisguised strategic satisfaction. Every percentage point of American planning capacity consumed by this crisis is a percentage point not applied to Ukraine, not applied to NATO's eastern flank, not applied to the Baltic question that Moscow has been repositioning around for 18 months. Russian analysts are not worried about this development. They are measuring it. China is watching with more careful attention. Beijing is not celebrating, it is calibrating. What Washington's response to 500 transferred ICBMs reveals about American willingness to act decisively under deterrence pressure will directly inform Chinese modeling of the Taiwan timeline. If the United States absorbs this transfer without a credible military response, Chinese strategic planners draw a specific conclusion about American thresholds. Those conclusions do not stay theoretical. They become operational planning assumptions. The Gulf states are facing a simpler and more immediate reality. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and every American-aligned government in the region has structured its foreign policy around the American security guarantee for 50 years. That guarantee has now demonstrated visible, measurable limits. Iran holding 500 Hwasong-18s is unambiguously the most militarily powerful actor in the region. Accommodation accelerates, realignment accelerates. The calls being made in Riyadh right now are not to Washington. The post-Cold War non-proliferation framework, already under sustained strain, has absorbed a blow it will not recover from in its current configuration. A new order will eventually emerge. But the gap between the collapse of the old framework and the stabilization of the new one is historically where miscalculation lives, where conflicts begin that no party planned for. We are in that gap now. 500 Hwasong-18s, road mobile, solid fuel, maneuvering warheads, star-guided, dispersed across Iranian territory, immune to preemptive strike, resistant to every intercept system currently deployed in the region, potentially nuclear-armed. This is the strategic reality that Israel, the United States, and the entire Western-backed regional security order woke up to. It did not exist 72 hours ago. It cannot be reversed. Every decision made from this point forward, in Washington, in Tel Aviv, in Tehran, in Beijing, in Moscow, will be made inside this new reality, not the one that existed before it. The calculations that governed the last 30 years of Middle Eastern strategic balance are no longer the operative calculations. The old Middle East is gone. The question now is what gets built in its place, and whether the process of building it stays below the nuclear threshold. Does Washington find a path to formally acknowledge Iranian deterrence parity without framing it as strategic defeat? And if it does, what does that acknowledgement cost American credibility with every other regional ally watching? Does Israel move militarily against Iranian launch infrastructure before that window closes permanently, accepting the full economic and casualty cost of the response that follows? Does the non-proliferation framework collapse entirely, triggering Saudi, Turkish, and potentially Egyptian nuclear programs within a decade? Or does this transfer paradoxically force a new multilateral arms control architecture that actually holds? And if the nuclear threshold gets crossed, regardless of who crosses it first, does the doctrine of controlled escalation survive contact with 500 dispersed, mobile, second strike-capable warheads? Leave your honest assessment in the comments. The most important conversations on this channel happen there. Share this with anyone in your life who is serious about understanding where global power is actually moving. Not the version that makes the evening news, but the version that shapes the decisions being made right now behind closed doors. Until the next update, stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop asking the questions that matter.